You would expect the boy hero of Oo to uphold the law, and Finn does most of the time, but Finn's definitely donked up a few times. The Green Knight might try to make Finn atone for his crimes, but we thought we'd take a more level-headed approach. I'm Arielle with ChannelFrederator, and this is 8 times Finn would have been locked up. Make sure to subscribe and click the bell icon to become part of the notification squad. You might be asking, Oo has laws? Like many post-apocalyptic societies, Oo is rather lawless and forgiving. Well, forgiving if the person in charge likes you, and PB happens to like Finn. So to make this relatable to the modern viewer, we're going to use the laws of New York. Why New York, you ask? Well, for one, all the characters that were around Oo before the Mushroom War have American accents, namely Simon, Betty, Patient St. Pim, Marceline, and Marceline's mom. We also know that Oo is in the ocean. New York City would be a clear frontrunner, but in Elemental, we get a clear shot of Oo's pre-bomb skyline, and there's no definitive NYC features. But there's no other coastal US city that names its subway lines numerically, like on the outside of Lich's lair, which also really feels like an NYC station. But what is this, cartoon conspiracy? Let's just postulate for now that Oo is somewhere on the East Coast, and use the laws of New York State for ease. Now let's see what Finn's done. Harassment. Sometimes even a fun-loving human boy can overstep some boundaries, especially when he's transformed into a wolf that goes around hugging as many creatures as he can, like in the Season 4 episode, Hug Wolf. Now, going around and hugging everyone in the Candy Kingdom without their consent is obviously not okay. It can't count as battery or assault because those require more serious injury. Instead, it counts as first-degree harassment, which is when someone intentionally and repeatedly engages in conduct that places the other person in reasonable fear or injury. I would certainly say that if a giant wolf came running up to me and engulfed me in his arms, I would have reasonable fear for injury. But the key word is intentional. If hug wolves go by werewolf rules, does any action that Finn makes as a hug wolf count as intentional? The hug wolf version of Finn certainly intended to hug as many people as he could, and you can't really separate the two when Finn's under the curse. So as far as the law goes, it counts. In which case, first-degree harassment is a Class B misdemeanor, which means up to 3 months in prison for poor, semi-innocent Finn. Be careful who you hug, or who you let hug you. The more serious crime here is jailbreak, which also occurred while he was a hug wolf. Surprisingly, escape from custody, while definitely a crime, is not very well defined in terms of the consequences. It just means more and longer custody, so get used to those bars. In his case, candy bars. Criminal trespass. Hero or intruder? Finn's busted into a number of people's houses without permission. The least of these offenses was in Marceline's closet from Season 3, where, despite a note on Marceline's door that clearly states no one should enter her house, Finn and Jake go in anyway while playing Cloud Hunt. Then they hide out in Marceline's closet to avoid getting caught. Since Finn and Jake totally saw the note and entered anyway, there's no way to argue that the action was unintentional or that they had permission. They very obviously did not. This case is then a second-degree criminal trespass, a Class A misdemeanor which could get Finn and Jake up to a year in jail. You might be saying, hold up, Finn totally saw Marceline naked. Couldn't he also be slammed with a violation of unlawful surveillance? He should be, but in New York law, you actually have to be using a camera or something that takes an image to be charged, which I'm gonna say is definitely not okay and should be updated. But there you go. Criminal mischief. Criminal mischief is a term that somehow manages to sound very official while also sounding super vague. But it just refers to a crime where you break someone else's stuff. In the episode The Chamber of Frozen Blades, Finn and Jake take it to the next level. They commit a second-degree criminal trespass. The duo enter the Ice King's home to snoop and find out whether he plans on capturing any princesses. While there, they get sidetracked and end up discovering his ninja room. Naturally, they break and damage a bunch of the Ice King's possessions in the ninja fights that they have. Luckily for our heroes, the damage wasn't intentional. Unfortunately, the Ice King's display case, recliner, and skins and tubs definitely incurred more than $250 worth of damage, which is the minimum for an unintentional case to count as criminal mischief. Thus, it's another Class A misdemeanor, up to 1 year in jail and $1,000 in fines. But Finn and Jake also threatened the Ice King with weapons in his own home, before they had any evidence of a kidnapped princess. That counts as harassment again, and this time of the second degree. But it's not the more serious aggravated harassment of the second degree, since they didn't threaten the Ice King repeatedly. So somehow, it's just a violation. There's a fine, but no time. You get off easy this time, boys. forgery. While more serious cases typically revolve around legal documents, basic forgery is still a violation. It's simply whenever someone falsely makes, with a written instrument, something to deceive or injure another. So writing a letter as someone else in order to start a fight definitely counts as forgery, and that's exactly what Finn does in Frost and Fire. Finn thinks he has to make a cosmic owl dream come true where Ice King and Flame Princess fight. To do that, he writes insult letters to each contender, pretending to be the other person. Naturally, each insult letter ends with an invitation to fight. It was a pretty amateur job, really. He didn't even change his handwriting. Finn would make a terrible criminal mastermind. Somehow, Finn's poorly forged letters work. Ice King and Flame Princess become so enraged that they don't suspect the handwriting, and they fight it out, just as Finn wanted. Cosmic Owl or not, if you think forging letters to make your girlfriend fight someone is cool, it's not. It's illegal. Finn's letters count as third-degree forgery, which is another Class A misdemeanor, giving him up to a year in prison and a fine as high as $1,000. This episode ends up pretty poorly for Finn, so sometimes justice works in more ways than just sending you to jail. Burglary. Twice. In order to burgle, you have to trespass with the intent of committing a crime. You're bumped up to second-degree burglary when the building that you're trespassing into just so happens to be someone's house, which, as we said earlier, Finn has done multiple times. Exhibit A, The Lich, where Finn and Jake break into literally every princess's home in order to steal the gems right off their heads. And also the Ice King's home. Granted, they did it because they were told it would save everyone from the Lich, but the opposite turned out to be true. So they broke the law and donked up the universe. Good job. Donking up the universe doesn't have an official criminal charge, but second-degree burglary is a Class C felony that would give Finn and Jake 1 to 15 years in prison and a fine up to $5,000. But Finn, true criminal as he is, has also committed first-degree burglary. The difference is that you break into someone's house with the intent to commit a crime, and you also injure someone in the process. In the episode What is Life, Finn breaks into the Ice King's house in order to steal some thunderbolts for Nectar. But the Ice King eventually finds out and fights Finn with an Isopede. Granted, the Ice King's injuries are minor and totally self-inflicted, and he does attempt to harm an innocent bystander. But still, arguing that the Ice King's injuries occurred in a defensive battle against a burglar is very legit. So Finn's now looking at a Class B felony with an updated 1 to 25 years in prison, plus that $5,000 fine. Poor Ice King. Why can't Finn stop illegally entering his property? Involuntary manslaughter. The episode 3 Buckets ends with a fight to the death between Finn and Fern. Rather, it seems like Fern's bent on killing Finn and Finn's expecting to be the victim, until his robot arm mishears the word finality to fatality and lethally weed-whacks Fern right in the gut. Now, this is a rather complicated case. Assuming that Finn's little pep talk wouldn't have worked, the fight was definitely headed towards someone dying. Throughout the fight, Finn was clearly on the defensive. One could argue that Finn killed Fern out of self-defense, which would be a justifiable homicide. This would be ideal for Finn because he wouldn't go to jail. He would just be haunted by his crushing guilt. Hooray! However, the laws on justifiable homicide are understandably strict. Basically, New York law states that you can't use deadly physical force on someone unless you really, truly think they're trying to kill you. There's serious arguments for that. The moments before Fern's death, you can see Finn's arm wobbling, as if Fern is exerting force to try and cut off his neck. But the law goes on to say that even if someone's trying to kill you, it's still illegal for you to kill them if you're able to avoid doing so by running away. And it's possible to argue that, since the fight was at a standstill at the moment of Fern's death, the fatality wasn't necessary. Finn wasn't out of other options yet. For example, he could have scratched Fern and tried to make a run for it. And let's not forget that Finn started this confrontation. With that in mind, it seems that we're looking at third-degree murder, also known as involuntary manslaughter, also known as killing someone by accident, which is, make no mistake, definitely still tried as a form of murder. More precisely, it's a Class C felony that would get Finn between 3 and 15 years in prison, somehow less than first-degree burglary, But there's also the question of whether or not Finn's arm keeps records of its vocal commands. If it does, and the only solid proof in this whole case is that the arm heard the order fatality, then there's a chance that Finn could be tried for second-degree murder, an intentional, unpremeditated killing, in which case the sentence moves up to 15 to 25 years in prison. No word on what laws are for killing someone who was later reanimated in a lab. Treason. You thought killing someone was the worst act on this list? You gotta check out the treason laws. Treason is defined as the crime of betraying one's country. And since bubblegum basically is the Candy Kingdom and Finn is basically employed as her knight, one could argue that an act of treason is just any time Finn goes against PB's orders or lies to her. At least Lemongrab would argue that. It's very lucky for Finn that PB is not Lemongrab. Trifling treasons aside, we have one very recent, very serious case. PB had every right to convict Finn of treason in the episode Gumbaldia for acting as if he were an official diplomat and representative of the princess without PB sending him or even indicating that she wanted a diplomatic solution. In fact, it was quite the opposite. When Finn confronted her about the upcoming war, Bubblegum shot him down and explicitly told him that things would have to be done the ugly way. To make matters worse, if Finn had given Bubblegum a hug like Gumball told him to do, he would have cripplingly debilitated Bubblegum, making her unrecognizable with dumb-dumbness. And that would have made the Candy Kingdom instantly fall to Gumbaldia. Finn might have had the best intentions, but the Dum-Dum Juice reveal meant that Gumbald's truce was clearly insincere. If Peppermint Butler hadn't accidentally victimized himself, Finn's actions would have destroyed the Candy Kingdom. Now, the ruler of an authoritarian state like the Candy Kingdom could declare any crime against the throne treason and get away with it, whether it's just or not. But in present-day US, treason is an act by which a so-called ally levies war against the US or adheres to their enemies. The best-case scenario is a prison sentence of 5 years and a $10,000 fine. Which doesn't seem terrible until you hear the worst-case scenario: death. Yeah, don't commit treason, kids. However, in present-day law, an enemy is clearly defined as a nation in which our nation is declared or open war. The Candy Kingdom hasn't yet declared war on Gumbalia. In fact, the opposite is true. Bubblegum declares war because of Finn's actions. This little detail might save Finn's buns. Or it might not, because you could argue that Finn's actions levied war against a state that the kingdom was openly hostile against. Also, PB is an authoritarian figure who can do whatever she wants. So, good luck, Finn. We're rooting for you, you criminal you. I'm Arielle, and thanks for watching 8 times Finn would have been locked up. Did we miss any felonies? Which was his worst crime? Tell us in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe and click the bell icon to become part of the notification squad. If you want to see more videos like this one, consider supporting our Patreon, where we post sneak peeks at new pilots, behind-the-scenes footage, extended creator interviews, and more. And remember, Frederator loves you.